Okay, so you know those news clips you see sometimes where you just kind of have to do a double take?
Yeah.
You watch it again, you're like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, what did I just see?
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people had that reaction when they saw these reports recently about Donald Trump and this whole thing that went down on Air Force One.
Right, the gold card.
Yeah, the gold card and him sweating, all that stuff. So we're going to jump right into a YouTube transcript for this deep dive. And this one comes from the Ring of Fire to kind of break down exactly what happened and, what the context was behind it all and some of the reactions they had.
Sounds good.
And, those of you listening at home, we're trying to figure out with you, like, what does this all mean? So we're going to use this transcript from the Ring of Fire to try and figure out what exactly is going on.
Exactly. Unpack it.
All right, so let's start with this whole $5 million gold card thing.
Okay.
So in the YouTube transcript, they show this scene of Trump on Air Force One, and the host is describing him as like really sweaty, even slurring his words a little bit.
Wow.
And he's holding up his gold card, and he straight up says, this is a $5 million card for wealthy immigrants.
He said that.
Yeah, and he also said that he was like the first buyer of this card.
Okay, so the host of the Ring of Fire, like, what was their reaction to this?
Yeah, so right away, the host starts commenting on how Trump looks, and they say he looks like drunk or plastered.
Oh.
They point to the sweating, the slurring, the fact that he's talking kind of slow. And it's like, I think a good point, like when we see public figures and they're acting like this, like, how do we interpret that?
That makes you wonder, like, what's going on behind the scenes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the host doesn't stop there. They go on to question, like, wait a minute, why would a U.S. citizen even need to buy an immigrant card?
Right. That doesn't even make sense.
And they even like jokingly say that someone should have asked Trump, like, are you even eligible to be president right now?
It does raise that question about the media's responsibility. Like, when you have a public figure saying or doing something that's kind of questionable, are they supposed to just report on it, or do they have a duty to dig deeper and ask those tough questions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So after the whole gold card thing, they move on in the transcript to talk about the economy.
Okay, interesting.
So apparently someone asked Trump about the economy and how it seems to be like falling apart in real time.
Oof. Yeah, that's not a good sign.
No, it's not. So according to the transcript, Trump responds by saying that he inherited a terrible economy and that there's been a huge loss of manufacturing with all these plants closing down all across the country.
Right. The whole blaming the previous administration thing. We've seen that before.
Yeah, he even throws out a number. He says something like 90,000 plants have closed since NAFTA.
NAFTA, huh? Trying to bring that back.
Yeah, it's interesting. He chose to focus on that. And then he goes on to use this analogy where he compares the economy to like a sick patient that's going through a major operation.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
Right. And then he finishes by saying that the country is going to be booming soon with trillions of dollars coming in.
Okay, so a lot of big promises there. But did he give any specifics about where this money is coming from or how this is all going to happen?
Not really. It's all pretty vague. But this is where the Ring of Fire host starts to push back a little bit.
Okay, I'm interested to hear this.
So they point out that NAFTA was actually replaced like 10 years ago by a new trade agreement called the USMCA.
Oh, yeah, the USMCA. I remember that whole thing.
And get this, the host even mentions that Trump himself has criticized the USMCA in the past. So it seems a little weird that he's now blaming NAFTA for all the economic problems.
Yeah, it doesn't really add up. It's almost like he's trying to rewrite history or something.
Yeah, and then there's the whole trillions of dollars thing.
Right, like where is all this money supposed to be coming from?
The YouTube host says they tried to verify that claim, and they could only find it mentioned on a few conservative websites with no real evidence to back it up.
So basically they're saying he's just making stuff up.
Pretty much. And it's like, with all these economic predictions and promises, especially when they're coming from politicians, you got to be careful about just taking their word for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's important to do your own research and look for evidence to support those claims.
Right. So we've got the gold card, the economic stuff,
Yeah.
and then the YouTube host kind of brings it all together with their main takeaway.
Okay. What's that?
They say that based on how Trump looked and what he said during this whole Air Force One thing, they're really worried about his mental state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they even use the phrase severe mental issues.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, and they go on to criticize the media for not focusing more on this.
It's like they're saying that this is the bigger story here, not the gold card or the economic stuff.
Exactly. And they even say that Trump has a clearly debilitating mental sickness.
Wow, so they're not holding back at all.
Nope. And it's interesting, you know how the YouTube host zeroed in on Trump's demeanor right away? Like they were really paying attention to his body language and how he was speaking.
Right, and while those things can be important, it's also worth remembering that our interpretations of those things can be subjective.
Yeah, for sure. So to understand where all this is coming from, it's helpful to know a little bit about the Ring of Fire.
Okay, what's their deal?
So according to the transcript, they started out as a radio program back in 2004, founded by this guy, Mike Papantonio.
Okay.
And then they've evolved over the years. They were on Air America for a while and the Young Turks Network, and now they have a big presence on YouTube.
Right, I've seen their videos.
Yeah. And the host in the transcript specifically mentions that they're committed to continuing to create content, especially since there's a chance Trump could run for president again.
Okay, so they're going to be keeping a close eye on him.
Definitely. And they're going to offer their perspective on what he's doing and saying.
Makes sense given their history and their audience.
Right. So to sum up this whole deep dive into the Ring of Fire transcript, we've got the $5 million gold card, which kind of makes you wonder about immigration and how that whole process works.
Yeah, like what was that all about?
Exactly. Then there's the economic talk where Trump is basically saying everything was a mess before he came along, but now it's all going to be great with all this money pouring in.
And the host is basically saying, like, hold on a minute, let's look at the facts.
Right. They're challenging his claims about NAFTA and those trillions of dollars.
Important to keep those things in check.
Absolutely. And then the big takeaway from the YouTube host is that they're really worried about Trump's mental health based on how he was acting during this Air Force One event.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. And we have to remember this is just one perspective based on this transcript from the Ring of Fire.
Right. There are always multiple sides to every story.
For sure. And that brings us to a question for you listening at home. With all this talk about Trump and these YouTube channels that have a certain point of view, what do you think about the role they play in looking at these public events and what politicians are saying?
Yeah, how do you make sense of it all and figure out what to believe?
Like when you see something like this with Trump and his gold card and his comments, and then you hear this host saying they're worried about his mental health, like how do you process that?
It's definitely something to think about.
It is. And I think it's important to consider all the different perspectives and try to form your own opinion based on the information you have.
Yeah, for sure. Don't just take one person's word for it.
Exactly. All right, well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time.